Welcome to this explainer on TOGAF Phase C, specifically focusing on the application architecture. Listen, if you're an executive leader, you already know that translating a high-level business vision into actual functioning technology, well, it's often where things get incredibly complicated, right? It's like a giant puzzle. Today, we're unpacking exactly how Phase C provides a structured, consultative approach to solving that exact problem and really aligning your high-level strategic objectives with your IT infrastructure. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive into this. How do you ensure your IT investments actually execute your business strategy? Honestly, it's the multi-million-dollar question for literally any enterprise. Phase C is designed specifically to answer this by creating a blueprint that tightly aligns your application landscape with your strategic business goals. We're going to explore exactly how to build that blueprint today. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, bridging strategy and IT. Second, tailoring architecture views. Third, mapping value with matrices. Fourth, identifying capability gaps. And finally, defining the investment roadmap. We'll move systematically from strategy all the way to an actionable roadmap.
All right, Section 1, Bridging Strategy and IT.
Think of Phase C as the absolutely critical bridge that takes the why and what from your business architecture and figures out the how. We're essentially managing a core duality here. On one side, we have the baseline application architecture, the current, everyday, existing state of your enterprise's applications. And we have to contrast that with the target application architecture. That's the optimized, future state that directly enables your overarching architecture vision. The entire goal of Phase C? Figuring out the absolute smartest, most efficient journey between those 2 points. But to build that bridge effectively, we need way more than just a list of software. Building this out requires critical architectural inputs. We've got to consider constraints on the architecture work itself, comprehensively assess budget requirements, evaluate the governance and support strategy, and of course, identify the exact scope of the impacted organizations. Basically, developing a truly effective target architecture means grounding it in the cold, hard realities of your business operations. Moving right along to Section 2, tailoring architecture views. Look, complex systems simply cannot be explained the same way to everyone, right? A developer doesn't need the same view as a CEO. So we have an incredibly diverse set of stakeholder concerns the architecture must address. We're looking at the functional users of the applications, deep integration requirements, the inevitable constraints surrounding data migration, detailed development considerations, and the very real operational support capabilities required to, just keep the lights on. If your architecture doesn't address all of these perspectives, honestly, it fails in execution. So how do we manage all this complexity? Well, the TOGAF standard uses catalogs. Now, a catalog is basically a hierarchical inventory of the organization's application portfolio that decomposes model entities, like logical applications, into physical components. Think of catalogs as your raw material. They're the foundational lists that allow us to manage both business and IT capabilities without getting totally lost in the weeds. But as you know, lists aren't exactly great for visualization or high-level strategic planning. That's where diagrams come into play. They present complex application structures from tailored viewpoints, allowing stakeholders to visualize module dependencies without ever having to see a single line of code. And this brilliantly illustrates how we can take highly technical subsystem structures and present them in a way that allows non-technical executives to confidently make big strategic decisions. Okay, Section 3, mapping value with matrices. Now we shift from visual diagrams to understanding the actual quantifiable business value of these applications. Matrices are what show us the core relationships. We aren't just looking at a CRM system or an ERP module in a vacuum. No, we are directly mapping that CRM system to the customer support business service, which in turn drives the client retention business capability. We map the ERP module directly to the supply chain service and the inventory management capability. In Phase C, every single application must earn its keep by tangibly supporting the business. Matrices also reveal operational reality. They help us identify shared operations capabilities and determine the specifically impacted user communities. We can group applications by user type or geographic location. Critically, this process helps us pinpoint requirements for new or extended governance capabilities. It absolutely ensures the operational support organization has exactly what it needs for the smooth, long-term management of your entire application portfolio. Let's jump to Section 4, identifying capability gaps. This right here is the turning point. This is where we find out exactly what is missing between your baseline reality and your target vision. The core process of Phase C follows 4 highly logical steps. Step 1, develop the baseline architecture. Step 2, develop the target architecture. Step 3, perform the gap analysis. And Step 4, define candidate roadmap components. It's a methodical progression designed to walk executives from the current state right through to identifying the specific gaps in your business capabilities that IT actually needs to fill.
But hold on, before we officially lock in those gaps, the architecture models must be verified for internal consistency. Architects have to perform rigorous trade-off analysis to resolve conflicts among different views. They validate that the models actually support those overarching objectives and constraints we talked about earlier. They test the models for completeness against business requirements. And, super importantly, they seek to simplify complicated applications by decomposing them and relentlessly removing duplicate functionality. The ultimate goal here, a streamlined, highly efficient target state.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, defining the investment roadmap. Now we're moving from the theoretical gap analysis to the highly practical, long-term application investment roadmap. But before finalizing that roadmap, we have to resolve impacts across the broader architecture landscape. We have to ask some hard questions. Does this new application architecture create an impact on any pre-existing architectures? Are there opportunities to leverage this work elsewhere? Does it impact planned or in-progress projects? And crucially, do the business and data architectures need to change to cater to this? We literally have to ensure enterprise-wide alignment before spending a single dime. As the TOGAF source material explicitly states, following the creation of a baseline architecture, target architecture, and gap analysis, an application roadmap is required to prioritize activities over the coming phases. So the crucial point is that all of this architectural modeling, the catalogs, the matrices, the diagrams, it all ultimately culminates in a prioritized, actionable roadmap for your future IT investments. It's where the rubber meets the road.
This timeline illustrates how identifying those candidate roadmap components actually organizes enterprise activities over time. In the short term, we formally publish the architecture definition document. In the midterm, we systematically address the capability gaps and eliminate those redundancies we identified. And then in the long term, we fully implement the target application architecture. This feeds directly into the subsequent phase of the TOGAF method, the opportunities and solutions phase. As Phase C wraps up, there are a few critical administrative steps we have to take to ensure long-term value. We must finalize standards for each building block, clearly document the rationale behind all of our architectural decisions, and publish any reusable elements back into the architecture repository. Doing this ensures that the hard work done during this phase can be heavily leveraged for future efficiency across the entire enterprise.
We'll end on this provocative thought. After seeing the gap between your baseline and your target, are your current applications driving your strategy forward, or are they holding it back? Phase C gives you the structured, consultative framework to not just answer that question, but to build the exact investment roadmap to fix it. Thanks for joining this explainer.